Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Tuesday, September 21st. This is Africa 54.
Sudanese authorities stop an attempted coup. We'll have a detailed report. Kenyan donkey owners demand a permanent ban on the animal slaughter. And a Benin startup assembles and distributes computers from recycled materials.
Sudanese authorities say they have stopped a failed coup attempt on Tuesday planned by a group of military officers and civilians who are supporters of ousted President Omar al-Bashir. Sudan's information minister says security forces have arrested a number of soldiers, including senior military officers, in connection with the coup attempt. The failed takeover points to the difficult path facing a government that has reoriented Sudan since 2019, winning Western debt relief while battling a severe economic crisis and facing down challenges from those still loyal to Bashir. A ruling body known as the Sovereign Council has run Sudan under a fragile power-sharing deal between the military and civilians since the overthrow of Bashir, an Islamist shunned by the West who presided over Sudan for nearly 3 decades. Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok says the failed attempt was preceded by attempts to sow insecurity, especially in the east of Sudan, but had failed to undermine the country's democratic transition. In a televised statement, Prime Minister Hamdok spoke about the attempted coup.
You followed at dawn today the news of the failed coup attempt, which targeted the revolution and all the accomplishments achieved by our great people in order to undermine the civil and democratic transition. What happened is an orchestrated coup by factions inside and outside the armed forces, and this is an extension of the attempts by remnants since the fall of the former regime to abort the civilian democratic transition. This attempt was preceded by extensive preparations represented by lawlessness in the cities and the exploitation of the situation in the east of the country, closed national roads and ports, and block oil production, and the continued incitement against the civilian government. The coup should be followed by a full review of the transition in the most transparent way in order to reach a partnership that is based on the slogans and principles of the revolution and a road that would lead to civilian and democratic rule and nothing but that. For the first time, there are people who are arrested during the implementation of the coup, and practical steps have been taken, which obliges us to show the full truth to the Sudanese people and the world.
This was not the first challenge to the transitional authorities. Sudanese authorities say they have foiled or detected previous coup attempts linked to factions loyal to Bashir, who was deposed by the army after months of protests against his rule. David Doyle has more details on Tuesday's thwarted government takeover.
In Sudan on Tuesday, an urgent announcement broadcast on state television.
Honourable citizens, we received this urgent statement. The media advisor to the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Taha Abu Hajja, announces the foiling of a coup attempt.
A government source, speaking on a condition of anonymity, said the apparent coup attempt that began on Monday had involved an effort to take control of state radio in Omdurman. It's located across the River Nile from the capital Khartoum. A witness said the military had used tanks to close a bridge connecting Khartoum with Omdurman early on Tuesday. The interrogation of suspects involved in the attempted coup was due to begin, according to a spokesman for Sudan's ruling council. The country is governed under a fragile power-sharing deal between the military and civilians. That's since former President Omar al-Bashir was overthrown in 2019. Transitional authorities say they foiled or detected previous coup attempts linked to factions loyal to Bashir.
That was David Doyle of Reuters reporting. U.S. President Joe Biden used his first address before the United Nations General Assembly Tuesday to touch on a number of global themes. He declared that the world must move quickly and cooperatively to address the pressing issues of the COVID-19 pandemic, climate change, human rights abuse, and cyber attacks. President Biden acknowledged increasing concerns over rising tensions between the U.S. and China, but says he is not seeking a new Cold War. The president also noted his decision to end America's longest war last month in Afghanistan. Here's more of what Biden had to say on the COVID pandemic.
It's my honor to speak to you for the first time as President of the United States. We meet this year in a moment of intermingled with great pain and extraordinary possibility. We've lost so much to this devastating pandemic that continues to claim lives around the world and impact so much on our existence. We're mourning more than 4.5 million people of every nation, from every background. Each death is an individual heartbreak, but our shared grief is a poignant reminder that our collective future will hinge on our ability to recognize our common humanity and to act together. Will we work together to save lives, defeat COVID-19 everywhere, and take the necessary steps to prepare ourselves for the next pandemic, for there will be another one? Bombs and bullets cannot defend against COVID-19 or its future variants. To fight this pandemic, we need a collective act of science and political will. We need to act now to get shots in arms as fast as possible and expand access to oxygen, tests, treatments to save lives around the world. And for the future, we need to create a new mechanism to finance global health security. Already, the United States has put more than $15 billion toward the global COVID response. We've shipped more than 160 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine to other countries. This includes 130 million doses from our own supply and the first tranches of 500 million doses of Pfizer vaccine we purchased to donate through COVAX. Planes carrying vaccines from the United States have already landed in 100 countries, bringing people all over the world a little dose of hope, as one American nurse termed it to me, a dose of hope direct from the American people, and importantly, no strings attached. And tomorrow, at the U.S.-hosted Global COVID-19 Summit, I'll be announcing additional commitments as we seek to advance the fight against COVID-19.
For more insight on U.S. President Joe Biden's speech, let's go to the United Nations in New York, where VOA UN correspondent Margaret Bashir is standing by. Hello, Margaret.
Hi, Esther.
Quite a loaded speech from the president. What should we take away from this?
You're right, quite a bit to unpack. So I think on the COVID, really important discussion going to take place tomorrow, as he mentioned, this virtual summit. Super important for Africa, where we know 90% of Africans are waiting for their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccines. So really, really urgent to accelerate and expand vaccine deliveries across the globe, particularly in Africa. And we heard the president speak today about the end of the war in Afghanistan for the United States, and the idea that now, since the U.S. is not involved in any active military conflict anywhere, it would redirect its resources to things such as fighting the pandemic and tackling climate change, which is a real planetary crisis right now for everyone, affecting everyone in every corner of the earth. So the president was quite clear on that, and he said that the U.S. would work to build peace and prosperity, not just for American citizens, but for citizens everywhere. He also spoke about re-engaging with our allies and re-engaging at the United Nations. You know, the U.S. has come back to the Paris Climate Accord, which the Trump administration had left. It came back to the World Health Organization, which also the Trump administration left. So he's really trying to say that America is back and we're here for multilateral diplomacy.
America is back, and he did mention one country from the continent of Africa, and I guess a lot of people are excited. Tell us a little more.
Well, he mentioned two, actually. He mentioned Zambia and gave a little shout out for their elections and to the young people there, especially, congratulating them on their democracy. And on a sadder note, he reached out, spoke out about Ethiopia and about the conflict there, and condemned the fighting and the human rights violations and the use, particularly, of rape as a weapon of war. And he called for an end to the famine. You know, we know 400,000 people are in famine-like conditions in Tigray. So he expressed deep concern about the situation there. And as you know, the United States has Jeffrey Feltman as its special envoy to the Horn of Africa. So the U.S. is trying to engage to end that crisis.
Margaret, very briefly, what do we take away from our Secretary General's speech earlier today?
Oh, Secretary General had a very strong speech today, Esther. He scolded a lot of people. He used words like selfish and lacking political will. And he said that the fact that 90% of Africans haven't received their first single dose of the COVID vaccine is an indictment, a moral indictment on us, and it's obscenity, an obscenity. So he was quite angry about that. He is very upset about the unequal distribution of vaccines to the developing world, and he wants to see that remedied immediately. But he told the world it's time to, quote, wake up. We have a lot of crises, and we need solidarity, and we need unity to face them.
Margaret, thank you so much. VOA UN correspondent Margaret Bashir reporting live from the United Nations. Be sure to join Africa 54 on Wednesday when Margaret brings us another live report from the United Nations. South Sudan's Vice President Rebecca Nyadeng-De Mabior stopped here in Washington before heading to New York to attend the United Nations General Assembly. De Mabior sat down with VOA's Nabil Biagio and told him her team has been meeting with friends of South Sudan, including the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, to brief them on the implementation of South Sudan's 2018 peace agreement and seek their support. She also explained why she is traveling with a large delegation when her government has been unable to pay salaries to civil servants and diplomats.
I don't know how you term so much money, but what I wanted to say that the war is not an easy thing. So the country is going through the war. The war is the enemy of development and economy. And not only that, but also the pandemic also came. If pandemic can bring down the superpowers' economy, what about South Sudan? It will be very difficult. So with this delegation, you cannot, what we are using will not be paying the civil servant and the diplomat. But we are working on that as a revitalized government of national unity to see how we can clear the payment of our civil servant and diplomat. And also IMF and World Bank are also helping us on this. And that's why I have been meeting them. So at first they gave us some money to pay the civil servants, but also at the same time we are working as a government to see how we can pay our diplomat. Yes, the delegation is big. Some of them are coming for the issues. Like for example, I'm coming with ministers, Minister of Health on the issue of COVID-19, Minister of Agriculture on the issue of agriculture, also Minister of Gender for gender-based violence.
Mabio also addressed the international community's dissatisfaction with the political developments in South Sudan, which have led to the renewing of an arms embargo, as well as sanctions on specific individuals.
I'm not coming here to come and deny what was happening in the country, or no, to defend what is going on. Yes, we had some problems, and with these difficulties that we are going through, our people are expecting so much from the government. And what happened for many years now cannot be overcome just overnight. It is a process. We are asking our people to be patient with us. Also with the revitalized government of national unity, it's not only one party or two or three. There are many other parties who are involved. So it's not easy to convince everybody, because everything has to be done according to the chapters in the agreement. So if one party is not happy, it takes time for any resolutions to come out. So and then our masses are expecting so much. Yes, I know agreement is slow, but we're on the right direction.
That was South Sudanese Vice President Rebecca Nyadeng-Demabio speaking to VOA's Nabil Biagio. Let us know what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, authorities shut down a point of entry at the U.S.-Mexico border, halting the flow of Haitians arriving in the U.S. to seek asylum. But first, Heidi Adams tells us what's coming up on Wednesday's Straight Talk Africa.
On the next Straight Talk Africa, we'll take a look at terrorism hotspots on the continent and discuss what's at stake. We will look at how young people are being recruited by terrorist organizations and what governments can do to stop it. Join me, Heidi Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Lino Khmoudou, in Washington, every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
Welcome back to Africa 54. London police are trying to solve a decades-old murder mystery and are appealing Tuesday to anyone with information about the killing of a Nigerian boy whose torso was found in the River Thames 20 years ago to come forward to help them solve the case. Authorities believe the boy's death may have been a ritualistic killing. The boy was 5 or 6 years old when his body, which had the head and limbs severed, found floating near the Tower Bridge. Police believe he was trafficked from Nigeria to Britain, possibly via Germany. The boy's identity remains a mystery. Police have named him Adam and say forensic tests show he was from Nigeria. Donkey owners in Kenya are demanding a permanent ban on the slaughter of the animals after a court lifted a temporary ban earlier this year. They say their donkeys are being stolen and killed to meet a demand for beauty products and so-called medicine in China. Victoria Munga reports from Nairobi.
Kinampet Sampare is taking stock of his remaining herd of donkeys, making sure none have been taken. He says he did not worry about losing his animals a year ago during a government order that shut down donkey slaughterhouses. But since July, 6 of his donkeys have disappeared from his land. Sampare is convinced it's because the temporary ban on donkey slaughter was lifted in May, allowing the meat and hides to be sold again in Asian markets.
When the donkey factory was closed, the theft had stopped. It had stopped because since then, no donkey was lost until recently, when 6 of my donkeys were stolen and my neighbour's 2 donkeys.
Tens of thousands donkey owners like Sampare are demanding a fresh and permanent ban on donkey slaughter in Kenya. In a petition, some 30,000 owners from 28 counties said their animals are vulnerable to theft from poachers. Activists say the donkeys are being sold on the Chinese market, where they used to make beauty products and so-called medicines. Animal rights groups are calling for a regional ban on donkey slaughter.
But we also had a chance as ANAO and as members of the Association of Donkey Welfare Organizations in Kenya this year to discuss with members of IALA, the East Africa Legislative Assembly, the need to have this removed, not just from Kenyan laws, but all over East Africa. Because the moment you allow donkey slaughter in Tanzania and you stop it in Kenya, the donkeys will move across the border and come.
Kenyan authorities have appealed court ruling in May that lifted the previous ban, but as donkey owners wait a decision on the appeal due in October, state officials say they're not ready to open the donkey slaughterhouses.
Yes, it has been lifted by the court, but in terms of administrative, we feel that we cannot just go by what the court has said. We said we have no problem. We have not stopped them from slaughtering, but we are saying our inspectors will not inspect, and until you show us evidence that you are in the production systems of donkeys and therefore there is need for you to slaughter.
National figures show in 2019 there were an estimated 1.7 million donkeys in Kenya. Victoria Amunga for VOA News, Nairobi.
Blowlab, a startup in Benin, is converting plastic jerry cans into computers using recycled components and distributing them to the public at a low cost. Anne Zwaku visited the startup in Cotonou, Benin, in this story narrated by Moki Edwin Kinzeka.
Arthur Dadjo is a student in Cotonou, Benin, where innovation and recycling meet. For the past year, he has been using a computer he made himself. It is made from a plastic jerry can, assembled with recycled materials and parts from an old or broken computer to build what would become the computer's motherboard and hard drive. Locals call it jerry, after the name for the containers. With royalty-free software installed, it is as good as new, and most importantly, cheaper.
You can find a complete office computer between 300 and 350,000 in West African CFA franc. But with the components we bought with the help of the startup, we spent about 100 to 150,000 to have this computer.
BioLab makes these jerry computers a digital innovation lab working in the fields of education and digital technology. The startup regularly organizes workshops to teach people how to make their own computers for free. The trainers say in addition to giving people access to cost-effective products, they want to help develop skills in innovation.
Deuxième objectif, c'est justement celui de la stimulation de la...
The second objective is to stimulate creativity in children. Because when they learn to do these jerrys, they learn to be able to solve the problems they are confronted with in their environment, using the material or the means they have at their disposal.
Experts believe that the computer is increasingly an indispensable working tool, and that initiatives such as BioLabs should be encouraged.
A computer is a door to a world of opportunities. So, of course, making it accessible to the greatest number of people is beneficial for these people, for society in general. We can only see something positive in it.
The training to learn how to build a jerry is offered for free, but participants have to find the components to build their own computers themselves. BioLab has been in operation for 4 years, and founders say that hundreds of people have already taken advantage of the training sessions and built their computer. The startup is now working to make these self-built computers available to schools located in remote areas. With that, BioLab says it could bridge the digital gap, one jerry at a time. For Anne Zwanke in Cotonou, Benin, Moki Edwin Kinzaka for VOA News.
U.S. authorities have closed the port of entry at Del Rio, Texas, where more than 12,000 Haitians have arrived seeking asylum, and the Biden administration is flying them out in what may be the fastest large-scale expulsion of migrants in American history. Dina Mitchell reports.
This U.S.-Mexico entry port in Del Rio, Texas, remained closed Monday as more than 12,000 mainly Haitian migrants continued to gather on U.S. soil under the Del Rio International Bridge, waiting to be taken into custody.
Yesterday, it was in the 14,000s, and since DPS showed up and they've been able to block off some of the landings at the river, we've dropped to like 12,000 or so.
For days, U.S. authorities have worked to move the migrants out from under the bridge and out of the heat to processing facilities, where authorities determine who can apply for asylum and who will be flown back to Haiti. Many of the Haitians who made it here say they have been living in Brazil and Chile, some since the 2010 Haiti earthquake. They took the long trek to the U.S., encouraged by word of mouth that now was an ideal time to try to cross the border. One man said he had spent the past several months in Mexico on the Guatemalan border, kept there by the Mexican government.
It's very difficult for me. For example, I spent 2 months without work, without doing nothing for it.
In recent weeks, the bridge has become a holding place for migrants crossing the Rio Grande, while Border Patrol agents struggled to manage the massive influx.
Border Patrol agents in Del Rio sector have not been able to patrol in the field properly for several months now because we're all indoors taking care of processing, taking care of kids that are in our custody.
Some local residents say the sheer number of migrants makes them nervous.
When you have upwards of 20,000 people underneath the bridge, and people start getting restless, and when you're talking about a community of 45,000, that's half the population of this town.
Guylaine Youssef with the Haitian Bridge Alliance, a migrant advocacy group, says the Haitians are following the law.
One thing I'm hearing a lot of people saying, oh, they are coming here illegally. No. The legal thing for them to do is to come and ask for asylum. And that's what they are doing. But what's happening is that the United States is refusing to provide them access to get that protection.
The U.S. has flown out more than 3,000 Haitian migrants and has scheduled more flights in coming days, in what some are calling the fastest large-scale expulsion of migrants in U.S. history. But Haiti, with its recent earthquake and political turmoil, isn't able to handle the returned citizens, says migrant advocates. For Haitian migrants, making it to Texas only to be deported has been devastating.
The trip to get to the U.S. was tough. They deported us. Unfortunately, they didn't let us take any of our belongings. It was like being in jail. No food, nothing.
Those who are returned to Haiti are given $100. Their dream to live and work in the United States seemingly over. Dina Mitchell for VOA News.